I am telling you right now, when the shit hits the fan, all this shit will be gone, okay? Like, some of this, bro, water filtration system, just wait. I'll give it about a month tops. All this shit is gonna be gone.
This is how you make salt when your neighbor is trying to starve you to death. Find stone salt deposits and start cooking them for 2 days. This is what the 120,000 people in Nagorno-Karabakh have to do in order to survive. Since December of 2022, the authoritarian government of Azerbaijan have cut access to food and medicine to the region. Leading international law experts call the blockade a genocide. In the meantime, here's the recipe people in the region are using in order to extract salt and survive.
The zombie apocalypse isn't real? That's not just happening in Detroit, baby cakes. Even in a small town like Reno, you can run into that. Shabadoo, zombies! Shabadoo!
Well, when you get done posing in front of big giant trees, albeit much smaller than the other ones, or even having a nice dance on top of one, you had to do something with the stumps. So you already know what all those master builders that built all that grand architecture across America did. They just moved right into the stumps. These were the stump houses that made quite a popular stay in the 1800s, especially in the Pacific Northwest. And no, before I get the literal NPC yelling at me in the comment section, I am not saying everyone in the 1800s lived in a stump. I just think it's pretty cool, personally. I certainly wish we didn't rush to chop down all these massive trees and massive redwoods back then. But a beautiful sign of freedom at that time. You could live anywhere, do anything, even in a tree stump. Certainly takes a bit of innovation and craftiness of its own. Would you live in a stump house? I think it'd be pretty fun. Sadly, not much trees left that could be made into a house like that. Which reminds me, ever wonder why so many of our forests are less than 200 years old? A subject for another time, perhaps. Question everything, friends. Until next time.
Latino individuals all around the land. Okay? They understand this. So, they need to eliminate the target. You are the target, but they cannot eliminate you unless they identify you. Okay? They used to use nanobots. They've been using nanobots since the 1900s, but we are rising and our spiritual development is at such a level that the nanobots are melting because we are heating up within. The Kundalini energy rises, the warmer it gets, the warmer we get, the stronger we get. Alright? So, you have to understand that you have 7 chakras. They go along the base of your spine. Right? These chakras, each one is a door. You're supposed to open the door, all right? So imagine you trying to get in your house, but you got all this debris and shit in front of your door. You can't get in your house, right? You got to clean the debris up so you can open the door and walk in your house. Well, it's the same thing with your chakras. You have to open each chakra so that you can let the cosmic vibratory energy into the chakra and the spiritual energy into the chakra. And you can escape also through these chakras. So you have a lot of 1 minute left. A lot of people don't know the truth about the chakras, right? So they say things like, oh, well, get out of your root chakra, but they really mean get out of your lower self. All right? So you got to understand that they want to identify your force field. They want to identify your force field, okay? So that they can detonate you. These chips will detonate. These chips will also be used to track you down. All right? And we're going to make a part 2. I'm going to come right back with it, though.
The caller has hung up.
Yeah, peace to the guys and goddesses. We back. Like I said, the fallen angels working overtime. They don't want me to get this message out to y'all about these RFID chips. But we're going to connect the video somehow and make it flow all as one. So this will be part 2, but you might see it as one video altogether, or you might see it in 2 parts. I don't know. The message will get there regardless, though. So what I was saying was I was talking about the RFID chip. So understand that you have 9 bodies, all right? These bodies are light bodies, all right? I'll expound more upon these different bodies when I come home, because I don't have enough time to do that. But we as Aboriginal beings, the Anunnaki gods, Atlantean gods, blacks and Latinos, you so-called blacks and Latinos, we are composed of 9 different bodies, okay? Different light bodies, okay? So it's not just, you don't just have your solid body, okay? Now, human beings have three different light bodies: flesh, etheric, and spirit. All right. So these bodies also are connected to what make up your aura. All right. So your force field, the force field around you, is disguised and called spiritually as an aura. But
Hey, you wanna see some crazy shit? Check this out.
What's up guys, it's Ollie from History Profiles, and today's video will be on one of the most mysterious men in history, the Count of Saint Germain. He was noted to speak many languages. He was an expert of the violin and many other musical instruments. He was also said to study alchemy, science, and the arts. First-hand accounts of people that met him several times throughout their life said that he never aged a day. People throughout the ages have called him the man that knows everything, the Wonder Man, and the man that does not die. Let's get into the video. The Count of Saint Germain's real name is unknown. His background is also obscure, as we know nothing about his birth or childhood. There are many possibilities of the origins of the Count of Saint Germain, one being that he was the son of Prince Francis Rákóczi of Transylvania. This would account for his wealth and fine education, as he was a man of immense knowledge. Other reports identify him as the illegitimate son of Maria Anna of Pfalz-Neuburg, the widow of Charles II of Spain. Other accounts say that he was alive in the time of Jesus Christ and attending the wedding at Cana, where the young Jesus would turn water into wine. The Count's legend is so great that he apparently claimed to have received the staff of Moses from one of Moses' great-grandsons in Babylon in the time of Cyrus the Great, who was the founder of the Persian Empire. This would have been around 530 to 600 BC. Throughout his life, he created a confusing web to conceal his real name and origins, and used different names depending on the people who he was visiting. However, the name which stuck was the Count of Saint Germain when he courted European royalty and nobility in the 18th century. He would leave the rich and royalty in awe with his vast knowledge of science. He also knew the history of nearly every nation and could recount tales from thousands of years ago as if he was present there. He would play the violin, which would move people and leave them in tears. In addition, he spoke French, German, Dutch, Spanish, Portuguese, Russian, English, Chinese, Latin, Arabic, ancient Greek, and was even familiar with Sanskrit. The idea that the Count may have been immortal came to be in 1760, where the Count was visiting Paris that year. The Countess von Georgi had heard the Count had arrived at the home of Madame de Pompadour, the mistress of King Louis XV of France. The elderly Countess was questioning this, as she had met the Count while in Venice in 1710, some 50 years ago. When she met the Count again, she was flabbergasted to see that he hadn't aged a day, and she proceeded to ask him if it was his father that she had met in Venice. The Count replied, "No, madame. I myself was living in Venice at the beginning of this century. I had the honor to pay you court then." The elderly Countess then replied, "Forgive me, but that is impossible. The Count I knew in those days was at least 45 years old, and you from the outside, at that age at present." "Madame, I am very old," he said with a mysterious smile. "But then you must be 100 years old," said the Countess. The Count then replied, "That is not impossible." The Count then provided details of their previous meetings and what life was like in Venice 50 years earlier. The Count would travel to England, and he would contribute some of his own musical creations to L'Incostanza delusa, an opera performed at the Haymarket Theatre in London. The Count would then be arrested in London on suspicion of espionage, but was released without charge. Horace Walpole, the Earl of Oxford and a writer, mentioned the Count in a letter which stated, "The other day they seized an odd man who goes by the name of Count Sir Germain. He has been here these 2 years and will not tell who he is or where he comes from. He sings, plays the violin wonderfully, composes, is mad and not very sensible. They call him an Italian, a Spaniard, a Pole, a somebody that married a great fortune in Mexico and ran away with her jewels to Constantinople. The Prince of Wales has grown very curious about him, but in vain. He was too great a musician to not have been famous." The Count is then described as pale, with extremely black hair and a beard. He also dressed magnificently and had several jewels. Even his shoes were studded with them. The Count then appeared in the French court around 1748 and was employed by Louis XV for diplomatic missions. The Count would dine with Giacomo Casanova and would be described in his memoirs. The memoirs detailed their first meeting in Paris in 1757. He wrote, "The most enjoyable dinner I had was with Madame de Robert Hergy, who came with a famous adventurer known by the name of..."
A lot of people don't even know this. They contact to speak to the Black Pope. Not a black man, but a Black Pope. He wears the black garment. He's called a super Jesuit with a sworn oath, a very special sworn oath that I've posted online many times. It's pretty dark. It's a pretty dark oath, and it comes directly from their information, so it's not fabricated or somebody made it up online. And what's interesting is the governments of the world, the superpowers of the world, they contact and get approval for the war from the super Jesuit Black Pope. Now think about that kind of power. Think about that level of power. People don't even know a Black Pope exists. They don't even know what a Black Pope is, but when you start looking it up and then research the oath that's taken, it is so dark, it'll make you feel sick on the inside. That's how dark it is. At the rate that they're going with what they're doing, they can't persist too much longer. They still, however, right now hold a lot of power. I mean, even the governments of the world contact the Vatican before they go to war. A lot of people don't even know this. They contact to speak to the Black Pope.
I tried to tell you that many people today are descendants of artificial humans and clones, and you didn't believe me. But when I say I got your ass, oh, I've got your ass. So after the mud flood and the Great Reset, they would have needed people to repopulate these cities. That's when the so-called baby incubators come into play. The first time the public saw these human growing pods was at the world's fairs, disguised as incubators for premature babies, at the same time that they came out with the Cabbage Patch Babies. You have to understand, they always tell you what they're doing. You just have to be able to understand the language. By showing us these images, they are telling us that babies can be grown. I know this might be hard for some of you to understand, and it seems impossible. But believe me, nothing's impossible. Any technology that you see them with now, they've had for hundreds of years. So when you wonder where all these children came from in the orphan trains and why there was no parents, because these children were artificially grown. Oh my days.
My wife will go crazy when she hears this, because she's donating her organs if she dies and has a car accident or anything.
Yeah, she should not be an organ donor. And so what she has to do, she must go back to the License Bureau and revoke that. And the law says it's a revocation, it's not a refusal, and they can still get her organs. And that law has been passed here in Ohio. So you asked as we came in, have I been here before? Yes, I came here to testify against that law. And so then when they had hearings 2 weeks later, I came back again, and they said, we ordinarily don't allow people to testify more than once. Well, what is that kind of stuff? What kind of outfit do we have? So So I didn't say anything, but then they said, but we'll let you testify because you're a doctor. And I think to myself, why should they let me testify versus anybody else more than once? But in the state of Ohio, every representative and every senator voted for the bill to make it so that everyone is an organ donor. And it's presumed that everyone is an organ donor, and it's presumed that everyone has consented to everything to be done to them to see if their organs are good for someone else and to keep their organs in good shape that they can find someone to give them to. It's really, I think it's against Article 13 of the Constitution of the United States, and I think it's against the Article 8 of the Constitution of Ohio. I might have the 8 and the 13 mixed up between Ohio, but I think it's against it because, sorry about that. But the law, it's called the Uniform Anatomical Gift Act. It's already been passed in 47 states, including Ohio, and every representative in Ohio voted for it. Only one senator voted against it, and that was a black senator, because I think she might have heard what I said, that it's a form of slavery. They've made slaves of all of us. It's involuntary servitude, what they've done. And I think it's against the Constitution of our federal government and the Constitution of our state government. And so the law says, though, if you have signed up to be an organ donor and then you go back to the License Bureau, the law says that's a revocation, but it's not a refusal. You must have a document of refusal. Your wife must get a document of refusal. Now, you might say, and I don't know how old your wife is, but compared to me, she's just a kid, I'm sure.
Same as me, 75.
Just a kid. The oldest organ donor that I've read about was 91. They will take organs from anybody. It's just that they have Class A organs. Those are 16 to 30. And then as you get further away from that with different ages, different diseases, like they have taken organs from people with AIDS. Granted, they give them to other people with AIDS, but they're Class B organs. They have Class A organs, Class B organs, and that kind of thing.
So that document of refusal has to be authorized by an attorney that you presented to the Bureau of Motor Vehicles?
I'll give you something that you can do.
Okay.
I'll give you something that you can take with you. Now, the point about where your focus has been on vaccines, and rightly so, something stimulates you to become focused on that, whatever it is. And that's part of why I asked some of the questions I asked as to how you get involved. And I've told you a little bit about how I got involved, and I also told you I'm one of the leaders in neonatology for many years, and then because of this brain death thing, I've gotten off into paying attention to that and teaching people that about brain death. Brain death is a mendacity, and you might go home and look up the word mendacity. It's not a new word, and the first use of the word mendacity was around 1300 when it was used. At least that's what I found, and it had to do with some false religion. And mendacity means a lie, a deception, but it's a deliberate deception to mislead you, and that's why I think it's the best term for what brain death is. Everybody who's brain dead, everybody who's called brain dead has a beating heart, circulation, and respiration. If they didn't have that, you wouldn't have to call them brain dead. You could call them dead, but they're all alive. So, anyway.
Do you mind touching on your background a little bit? Do you mind touching on your background a little bit, please?
My background?
Yes.
Well, first of all, I was born in Norwood, Ohio, and went to Xavier University in Cincinnati, and then I went to St. Louis University to medical school and trained as a pediatrician, took care of children with leukemia and tumors for about 6 years, and during that time saw how many infants died and there were no treatments. And so it seemed like we should be able to do something. I mean, I was at a children's hospital where we did things for children of all ages, but not infants. And so I started a special care nursery in 1963 and continued there, taking care of babies, and then I went other places to do the same thing. So my wife and I have
Why ain't nobody tell me when I was eating kale smoothies almost every dang on day that kale depletes your iodine? And you know what iodine is? A necessary nutrient. And you know what can happen when you are deficient in iodine? Hormone problems, low functioning thyroid, aka hypothyroidism. You know what that causes? No period, weight gain, tiredness, being cold. I got my heater running right now. Why nobody tell me this? Y'all told me, eat healthy, eat your cruciferous greens. Y'all ain't tell me this part.
That's how Jamal talks about feminine, masculine
I keep
energy.
telling y'all, you know what the X really stand for? It don't just stand for the unknown. X stands for the divinity of the feminine energy, because the feminine energy was first. You got XY chromosomes. The X chromosome was first, right? Then came the Y, right? The Y comes from DNA. DNA that has been stolen. So that's why the X chromosome mutated to a Y. That's why we have the Y chromosome. So they hid it in science. So when I'm telling y'all that the black woman is God and she manifests herself out of dark matter energy, even if you don't know all about that, you should know about the X and Y chromosome, which clearly proves my point. I'm just making the dots connect. Nigga, now argue that. Why does the woman have the X chromosome, nigga? And why is the Y chromosome smaller than the X chromosome? Look at the X chromosome next to the Y chromosome. You can clearly tell that they fucking cut the fucking DNA cells off the X chromosome.
And so for me, like, that was the experience I had. And for other people, I heard people scream. You know, like, that was not my experience. But I also believe that if you think that ayahuasca is going to do the work for you, or any other psychedelic is going to do the work for you, I don't think it works like that.
That's very interesting, especially with ayahuasca. We've seen a lot of different people who've taken it. I haven't done the experience. But a lot of different people who've taken it, from celebrities to just regular people, all talk about the same or similar experience, right? Whether it's ancestors or whether they believe that they're literally in
certain ways in my emotional body without knowing that. And so for me, like, that was the experience I had. But for other people, I heard people scream. You know, like, that was not my experience. But I also believe that if you think that ayahuasca is going to do the work for you, or any other psychedelic is going to do the work for you, I don't think it works like that.
That's very interesting, especially with ayahuasca. We've seen a lot of different people who've taken it. I haven't done the experience. But a lot of different people who've taken it, from celebrities to just regular people, all talk about the same or similar experience, right? Whether it's ancestors or whether they believe that they're literally in the
In flames, guess what? We're gonna have a lot in common. When we get around each other, our energy gonna mesh. Alright? This is where you get your best friends from. This is where you get your homies from. This is where you get your, oh, that's my girlfriend, my best friend's my girl, that's my girl. That's where you get that family member from that you really genuinely fuck with out of all your other family members, because y'all got so much in common. That's because that's a twin flame. Y'all souls were both received this spark by the eternal flame of the cosmos at the same time. So that's the true meaning of a twin flame. And a soulmate is the soul that was split in half, but it's a part of you, it's your same pair. Whereas the twin flame, y'all just got the same spark. But the soulmate, that's the other half to you. That's your other half, literally. Alright? So we gotta understand these things, y'all. It's just we talking cosmic talk right now. We gotta get shit in line.
Folks can buy whatever they want to buy, do whatever they want to do financially, because we've got a power that's bigger than money. I mean, psychologically, we should have been devastated. You think some of us are crazy? All of us should be crazy. Every one of us. Every one of us. You think we got a few junkies? Any brother who's not a junkie is a miracle. Any sister who's not an alcoholic or suicidal is a miracle. Don't you know that the black women having to deal with black children, black men, white women, white children, and deal with what they've dealt with all these years and not be stock raving lunatics? Don't you know that's a miracle? Don't you know that's a miracle? That's a miracle.
Boy, I got that visual.
No.
So don't
This
play
could
with
be
me,
breakfast.
TikTok.
Okay.
TikTok.
I want you to look at this and think about, again, some people love hamburgers, some don't. Really want to respect all ways of life. But if this is appealing to you, just think of this when you think of vaccination. Vaccination. I'm getting a very good feeling about vaccination right this moment.
That is correct. Is it really that hard to believe that these pink salt mines could be petrified giants? Look at how close it resembles our own human anatomy. The average adult body contains 250 grams of sodium, less than 9 ounces, or about the amount of 3 or 4 salt shakers. But remember, they are not human. We're talking about giants. They had their own anatomy, and their own sodium levels were much higher, and resulting in more salt in their giant bodies. Now, did they petrify instantly as a punishment of some kind, or are they still aging? And the rocks and the pink salt we have today, are there the remnants of their long lost existence? Just something to think about. Is it really that hard to believe that these pink salt mines could be petrified giants? Look at how close it resembles our own human anatomy. The average adult body contains 250 grams of sodium, less than 9 ounces, or about the amount of 3 or 4 salt shakers. But remember, they are not human. We're talking about giants. They had their own anatomy, and their own sodium levels were much higher, and resulting in more salt in their giant bodies. Now, did they petrify instantly as a punishment of some kind, or are they still aging? And the rocks and the pink salt we have today, are there the remnants of their long lost existence? Just something to think about.